guys, welcome back to the forge. Today we're going to continue on with our leaf spring knife. Clean these bevels, do our final grinds. I put a good belt in the grinder. We've got our holes drilled for our tang in our tang for our scales yesterday. We got our scales rough cut out, and so we're going to get on it with this knife and try to get this thing as close to finished up today as we can. There'll be some hand sanding, and you know, I'm going to probably take it to 120 grit on the belt grinder, and then from there we'll clamp it to a table and we'll hand sand it a little finer. And you know, I don't want a really shiny, beautiful finish on this knife because I'm going to use this knife. I mean, I'm just making a good usable knife that I don't know, if I keep it, I can use it, and if I decide to sell it, the person who's buying it can take it out and use it and do what they will with it and not worry about messing up some fancy finish, you know. So so that's where we are. Let's stop BSing and let's get to work. I just wanted to show you real quick. Last night when we were out here in the shop, you couldn't see very well. We didn't have a flake of snow on the ground yesterday. It was a beautiful day. Sun was shining. It was nice outside. It was a little bit breezy, but I mean, it wasn't a bad day. And this started yesterday evening, and here's where we are today, blowing and drifting, and this is out the back window of my shop. Winter has returned with a vengeance to Salt Lake City, so just thought we'd show you all that. Now let's get to work. Alright guys, we've got our grinder set up here with a new belt on it. This is an 80 grit ceramic belt. It's a Norton belt. I'm not like doing a paid advertisement for Norton or anything. It's just passing along some information. So let's get on this. So we got interrupted by a phone call. And then I came back and started working on this a little more, and of course I forgot to hit record. Had to make sure my mic was on. So anyway, it's shaping up nicely. We kind of beveled this up here where the clip point is. I think we've gone about as far as we're going to go with this 80 grit belt. I may try to do a little bit of cleanup work right in here on this bevel a little bit, but we're about ready to switch to 120 grit and just kind of finish cleaning things up, and then we're ready to go with some sandpaper. we've got our knife clamped down here. The last belt I used on the grinder over there was 120 grit. We're going to hit this with a 220 grit sandpaper here. And I just cut a strip of it off like that. And then I've got just this little end of a a paint stir stick that I kind of use for a straight edge on it. And just fold that end over like so. Take a little Windex, spray it on there, and away we go. You see why I didn't want to sharpen this completely yet. We need to handle this knife too much. I'd hate to be coming like this and get over here too far and you'd slice yourself to the bone. So leave that blunt. I'll actually grind a secondary bevel into this now. Our primary bevels are ground, but I'll come back when I actually sharpen this knife. I'll grind a secondary bevel in down here, and that'll give us our actual cutting edge. But you just get you a straight edge of some kind. Doesn't have to be wood, that's just what I have. You know, it can be a metal, straight edge, a piece of metal, or I think a good hard piece of plastic of some kind would work all right. And like I say, we're not going to get real crazy on this. I just wanted to have a kind of a nice matte finish to it with some scale forge marks left in it. Give it a little character. Give it that handmade look, you know. I've got a board upstairs that I can lay that on and clamp it to, and I believe I'm going to run and grab that. So it's coming right along here. I switched over to just using my sandpaper dry. Some sandpapers you can get away with wet, some you can't. This one here, it's just destroying my sandpaper. And we just want a kind of a matte finish on this anyway. We're not taking this to a mirror shine, so. And I think I'll hit it with a buffing wheel. Just a little bit to take some of the sandpaper marks out of it when I'm through here. So here's our blade so far. So here was the steps. We did our initial grinds with 40 grit belt on the belt grinder. Then we came back and did some finish grinding on our primary bevels and our flats with 120 grit, or with 80 grit. Then we moved up to 120 grit and just cleaned up some of those marks a little bit. And then we came over here and clamped it to the table, and we've been sanding it with this 220 grit sandpaper. And after quite a bit of sanding with that sandpaper, I took it over, I just took it over to the bench and we took it to the buffing wheel, and some red rouge, and I buffed it out pretty good with that red rouge and the buffing wheel, then buffed it with a clean wheel, and that's where we are. And that's where we're going to stay. That's it. You know what I mean? I could keep working on this knife for hours and hours and get it spectacular. But like I say, it's going to be a usable knife. It's going to get scarred up and be chopping into wood and cutting God knows what. So it doesn't have to be immaculate. I'm leaving these spots in here, these forge marks, and some of the grinder marks and that. Big difference though from this side to this side. This side here, this is how it came off of the grinder after 120 grit belt. We haven't sanded this side or done anything to it yet other than clean it up with 120 grit belt on the grinder. This side, 120 grit belt on the grinder to clean it up, then hand sanded it with 220, and then hit it with some red rouge on the buffing wheel. Alright guys, well, after a whole bunch of sanding, hand sanding, and hitting it with the buffing wheel, here's where we are. We've got a pretty good finish on this blade. I probably took it further than I actually wanted to, but we left some little hammer marks, forge marks in there on both sides. You can get lost. You can get caught up and get lost in doing the final finish work on a blade like this, and you know, I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to look nice, but I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to show that it was hand forged. I want it to have a little bit of character to it, you know, and it, like I say, I probably went farther than I should have on it, but it'll make a nice looking blade. And total time into this thing with forge time, prep work, prepping my, you know, cutting my steel, welding on my handles, actually forging out the blade. See, and that's something that's pretty deceptive. When you watch a video where someone is forging out a blade, it looks like it takes 20 minutes or whatever, but there's a lot of editing that goes on. There's a lot more work behind the scenes that you don't see for the sake of keeping the video watchable, you know, short enough that people will be interested in watching it. So, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on that you can't show it all in the video, or it'd be a never-ending video. You try to show enough so that people get the gist of what it takes to make a knife, but I've probably spent, I'm going to say a minimum, and probably more, between 2 and 3 hours just forging this knife out on the anvil. And then grinding, I went through 2 40 grit belts to just rough grind the bevels in. And that probably took me an hour, hour and a half with that little 1x30 grinder I have. Then today we put, well, and then, you know, we annealed it, and we drilled our holes for our scales and our pins, and then today we put an 80 grit on and went over these bevels and these flats again with an 80 grit. Then we went to a 120 grit belt, did all that again, kept it just shy of being sharp because I need to handle it too much. And then when we got done with the 120 grit, we went to hand sanding. I've probably got, between the hand sanding and the buffer wheel with the red rouge, I probably have another, oh goodness, close to 3.5 hours of just doing that, maybe more. So, you know, we're looking, we've probably got a total of 7.5 or 8 hours of actual work into this blade so far. I'd lean more towards 8, and that's probably a giving estimate because, like I say, there's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes that you guys don't really get to see for the sake of keeping the video short enough that people want to watch it. So anyway, there we go. What remains to be done is we'll get our scales put on here, drill our holes. We've got to pin those scales. All right, guys and gals. So what we've got here is I just roughed out our scales. You know, we cut the material last night in the previous video. We just kind of cut out the squares, but in this video, I went ahead now and I just drilled them and pinned them so we get all our holes lined up. And then I took on the front of the scales here where we don't want to have to touch our blade doing our finished work. Went ahead and finished that up. Man, I don't know what it is about the lighting in my house, but it just looks like I have orange neon lights or something in here. It's crazy. Anyway, so that's where we are with those. Now it's a matter of, and again, I just rough shaped these scales, you know, so that they would, I wouldn't have so much material to grind off tomorrow after they've been glued. So there's our scales. I noticed we've got, I think it's this side, the right side here. And my carta's got like a hump in it right there in the middle. So I'm going to take that and sand that down a little bit. Alright guys, I don't know what it is with this lighting in here, but it's just ridiculous the way it makes everything look so orange. So I had to take these down. We somehow had just a little bit of a hump, and it was kind of rocking on our handle here, but on our knife, but it's nice and flat now. So we're ready to scuff these up and get them glued on. Yeah, there's no more of that rocking back and forth or anything. So our liners fit properly. Alright guys, so we've got our pieces all cleaned here. These have all dried. So now we're ready to mix up a little bit of epoxy here. I just want to kind of make sure that I've got the right liners here with the right deals. Okay, so we'll get us some epoxy mixed up. I think that should be enough. If it's not, we can always whip up a little more. So there's that. Got me a little stick here to mix our epoxy with and apply it. Now, I'm not sure if this is 5-minute epoxy or just what we've got going here. Because I took the little cover off of it that came on it. Had a little sleeve on it, and it was loose, and so I took that off. And we may get a little on our fingers, we don't really care. I would normally put some gloves on to do this, but I've got my trusty acetone sitting right there, ready to jump into action. You want to make sure you get plenty of epoxy on your material. Now we're going to get our pins through here. Tap this through a little. Okay, we got our pins through on this one. Now we'll go ahead and glue this other side here. And you know, if you screw this up, no worries, you just have to start all over again. So that's why we kind of lay everything out in the best manner we can, so that we know what goes where, and we're not sitting here in the middle of our epoxy trying to set up on us. you know, trying to figure out, okay, now which one went where? Where did this one go? This way we've got it all laid out and ready to go. So we're not wrestling with the unknown. All right. So there's that. And we'll go ahead and get this on there like so. Now we'll drive these pins through a little more. And we'll get this one here glued up. Well, okay guys, I really appreciate you hanging out with me again today. It's been a pretty good day. We got quite a bit done. We got our primary bevels finished up here, moved up to an 80 grit, and then up to 120 grit on the bevels and the flats, and cleaned those up. Then a whole bunch of hand sanding and getting that all, you know, getting that finish that we got on our blade here. I think it looks pretty good. Then we did a bunch of work with the buffing wheel to finish that up. Got our scales cut, pins cut, everything put together. By tomorrow, this will be all ready to be shaped and finished up. We can do the finish work on our scales, and we can call this one done. So, thanks for joining me. Appreciate you being here with me. As always, you know, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. We got a little residual epoxy left over here, but that's alright, it'll wear off. Give me a like if you liked the video, hit that subscribe button, and tune in for the next one. We'll finish up this knife, and then we're going to get back on our twisted Damascus billet we've been working on, and we're probably going to bang a knife out of that also. So anyway, take care of yourselves, get out in your shop and bang around, do something, make something, beat on something, fix something, you know. It's good therapy, and makes you feel good when you're done, because you know, gives you that feeling of accomplishment. So everybody take care tonight. We got winter time here. I had to shovel my driveway today. Got close to 10 inches of snow here, I believe. So, and it is cold out there tonight. So, all right, everybody, have a great one, and we'll see you on the next one.